K-drama chemistry can make or break an entire show. And these 10 pairings? On paper, they had everything. A-list stars, viral pre-release buzz, posters that practically promised fireworks. But somewhere between the script and the screen, something just didn't land. Today, we're counting down 10 K-drama couples who had all the hype in the world and still left us feeling nothing. Number 10 already has fans arguing in the comments, so stick around because the higher we go, the messier this gets. Let's start with a pairing that had people losing their minds before a single episode aired. Lee Min-ho, fresh off military service, returning in a fantasy romance, paired with Kim Go-eun, who'd already proven her range in Goblin. 2 parallel worlds, a king crossing dimensions to find his fated love. The premise alone broke pre-release search trends. And then the show actually started. Viewers quickly noticed the romance kept getting buried under dimension-hopping exposition. Every time the 2 leads built a moment, the plot yanked them apart to explain timeline mechanics again. Online discussions at the time pointed to pacing and writing as the real culprit. Not the actors themselves, but a script so busy juggling sci-fi logic that the relationship never got room to breathe. Fans described the connection as polite rather than electric. Like 2 people reading beautifully written letters to each other instead of actually falling in love on screen. This one genuinely stung because both actors are individually magnetic, just not together, not in this story. Were the leads miscast, or did the multiverse plot kill the romance before it even had a chance? Let us know what you think, because honestly, the comments on this one are split right down the middle every single time. But trust me, this is far from the most disappointing slow burn on this list. This one had a different kind of hype, the kind built entirely on casting news. The moment it was announced that Song Hye-kyo and Park Bo-gum were starring opposite each other, social media basically caught fire. 2 of the most beloved faces in Korean entertainment, an emotional, slow burn premise about a wealthy divorcee and a younger free spirit. It had instant classic written all over it. Instead, what a lot of viewers got was a show that spent most of its runtime on restrained conversation rather than genuine romantic connection. The age gap framing dominated online discourse so heavily that actual discussion of their on-screen dynamic got drowned out. People were debating the premise instead of feeling the romance. And when fans did focus on the chemistry itself, the general consensus was that the 2 leads felt more like a mentor and a gentle admirer than 2 people truly falling in love. Some blamed the slow, dialogue-heavy directing style. Others pointed to a script that kept both characters emotionally guarded for nearly the entire series, which meant the will they, won't they energy lasted way longer than it should have. Nobody expected a show with this much star power to feel this restrained. If you thought that was a letdown, wait until you see who's sitting at number 8, because this next one had fans waiting literal years. Hold on, guys. If you're new here, this is exactly the kind of list that gets people fighting in the comments, so make sure you drop your hottest take before the video ends. Now, back to the countdown. Picture this. It's 2018. Hyunbin is one of the biggest names in the industry. Park Shin-hye is a proven romance lead. And the premise is an AR-fueled sci-fi mystery set in Spain. The visuals alone made this look like the most ambitious K-drama of the year. And visually, it delivered. Romantically, a lot of viewers felt like the love story got completely overshadowed by the show's own gimmick. The augmented reality game mechanics took over entire episodes, and the emotional connection between the leads kept getting pushed to the background in favor of plot twists involving glitching avatars and corporate conspiracy. Fans online frequently brought up the same complaint that whenever the show finally slowed down enough for a romantic beat, it almost immediately got interrupted by another game-related crisis. Some argued the directing simply prioritized spectacle over intimacy. Others said the writing never gave the characters quiet, low-stakes moments to actually fall for each other outside of life or death scenarios. Either way, the result was a couple that audiences rooted for in theory, but rarely felt butterflies for in practice. And honestly, this isn't even the biggest case of great premise, forgettable romance on this list. Because what's coming up at number 7 might be the most controversial entry so far. This drama had one of the most stacked casts of its release year, plus a massive production budget, plus a mystery thriller hook set against the breathtaking backdrop of Korea's largest national park. Jun Ji-hyun, returning to television after years away, paired with Joo Ji-hoon, had fans expecting a character-driven emotional powerhouse at the center of it all. The show looked like a guaranteed prestige hit before a single episode aired. What audiences actually got was something almost everyone agreed on in online spaces. A drama that buried its 2 exceptional leads under a plot structure that didn't know what to do with them. The mystery elements were genuinely compelling at first, but the writing kept sacrificing the central partnership, the very thing the marketing sold hardest, for timeline jumps and twists that confused more than they captivated. IMDb reviews captured it perfectly. The cast is superb, but both outstanding leads are wasted. That sentence alone tells you everything about what went wrong here. It wasn't that Jun Ji-hyun and Joo Ji-hoon had no chemistry. When the show gave them genuine scenes together, the dynamic worked. The problem was how rarely that happened. The partnership that audiences expected to anchor the whole show kept getting sidelined by a script that had bigger ideas than it could actually execute. Were people unfair to expect more from a show with this pedigree? Maybe. But when you cast 2 stars of this level and still leave fans feeling like they barely got to see them together, that's on the writing. Were we too harsh, or did this show genuinely waste one of the best casts of its year? Drop your take in the comments, because if you think that's a stretch, wait until you see the couple at number 6. This one might be the most heartbreaking case of wasted potential on the entire list. A water god, disguised as a human, a no-nonsense female lead, a fantasy rom-com premise practically built for viral clips. This should have been an easy win. Nam Joo-hyuk was riding a wave of popularity. Shin Si-kyung had comedic timing fans already loved from previous roles. And the source webtoon had a dedicated fan base rooting for a faithful, charming adaptation. But somewhere in production, the tone got completely muddled. The show kept oscillating between broad slapstick comedy and serious melodrama, and that inconsistency bled directly into the central relationship. One episode, the leads would have genuinely funny, charming banter. The next, the show would suddenly demand viewers take their romance completely seriously with almost no transition between the 2 modes. Fans online repeatedly described the chemistry as stop and start, like the show couldn't decide what kind of couple it wanted them to be. A chunk of the blame fell on pacing and editing decisions. Episodes felt uneven in both length and tone, which made it hard for any romantic momentum to build naturally. Both actors got praise individually for their comedic chops, but as a couple, audiences felt like the show never let them settle into a consistent dynamic long enough to actually fall in love on screen. This one genuinely shocked people because the source material's romance was beloved. Viewers waited for that magic to translate to screen, and for a lot of fans, it just never consistently showed up. We're halfway through the list now, and things are about to get a lot more divisive. Buckle up for number 5 if you've been nodding along or shaking your head at any of these so far. You are going to have very strong feelings about the next few. We are deep in the controversial zone now. Let's keep going. This was billed as one of the most anticipated dramas of its year. A coming-of-age story about ambition, identity, and young love in the entertainment industry, starring 2 actors with serious critical acclaim behind them. Expectations were sky high, specifically because both leads were known for nuanced, layered performances. Fans assumed that meant their romance would feel just as textured. Instead, a large portion of the audience walked away, feeling like the two leads had more of a sibling-like rapport than a romantic one. The show spent a significant amount of its runtime on individual career arcs, which were genuinely well-written, but the actual romantic relationship between the leads often got treated as a subplot rather than the emotional core of the story. Online discussions at the time frequently used words like platonic and comfortable to describe their dynamic, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's absolutely not what a slow burn romance needs to land hard emotionally. Reviewers also pointed out that Park So-dam's character, despite being arguably the most compelling person on screen, consistently felt like she was on the outskirts of the main story rather than at the center of it. Less screen time for her meant less time to build the relationship that viewers came to watch. Some placed the blame on script structure. The show had too many threads to juggle, leaving less room for romantic development. Others felt the directing leaned into a quieter, understated tone that worked thematically but never delivered the emotional tension viewers expected. Do you agree, or do you think we're being too harsh on a slow burn that just needed more time? Because trust me, the next entry is going to spark way more debate than this one. This one hurts differently because it should have been bulletproof. Song Kang, fresh off back-to-back hit projects, and the most talked about leading man of his generation. Park Min-young, a veteran of the workplace romance genre who had already proven her ability to carry a show and deliver sparks, opposite multiple leading men. Put them in a Netflix-streamed JTBC romance set inside a meteorological agency, and you have a setup that looked absolutely impossible to mess up. And yet, by the time the finale aired, the conversation in fan spaces wasn't about how great the couple was. It was about how lukewarm everything felt. My Drama List reviews specifically called out their on-screen chemistry as often lukewarm, despite the fact that both actors were performing well individually. Multiple critics pointed out that Song Kang, who had lit up the screen in other projects, felt emotionally flat during the romantic beats here, comfortable with the scenes, but somehow not quite present in them. Park Min-young brought her usual professionalism, but professionalism alone doesn't create electricity. What made this even more frustrating was that the show's tone kept shifting. One episode, it was a warm workplace romance. The next, it was diving into melodrama, then workplace politics, then family backstory. The constant tonal pivots meant the couple never got the sustained, focused screen time they needed to make audiences genuinely invested in their relationship as something more than a premise. Gulf News ranked this pairing as the #1 example of K-drama leads who should have been magical, but simply weren't. When critics are writing entire articles about your couple, specifically, that's saying something. Nobody saw this coming. This pairing was considered a near-guaranteed hit before it aired. Were both actors let down by a script that couldn't make up its mind? Or was this simply the wrong match, regardless of how much the marketing insisted otherwise? The comments section is yours. But if you think that's controversial, wait until you see what's sitting at number 3. This was one of the most hyped castings of its release window. Lee Jong-suk, returning to dramas after military service, paired opposite Yoona, two names with massive individual fan bases and a long-rumored friendship going back years. The chemistry expectations before a single trailer even dropped were enormous. Fans were already making "their moment is finally here" posts before the script was finished. Here's the thing, though. Lee Jong-suk himself flagged the problem before the show even aired. In a pre-release interview, he told audiences directly, "Some may feel disappointed. The story unfolds in a way that separates us physically. There weren't many scenes where we acted together." Yoona echoed the same sentiment, admitting she felt disappointed too that they weren't able to work together in more scenes. And that's exactly what happened. The noir thriller plot physically kept the leads apart for the majority of the series, placing them in separate storylines that occasionally intersected. When they were in the same room, the connection was warm and believable enough, but the show's narrative structure meant viewers went episode after episode with barely any couple screen time at all. The hype was built on the promise of their dynamic, and the show structurally couldn't deliver on it. They were even nominated for Best Couple at the NBC Drama Awards that year, which just shows how much people wanted this pairing to work. But nominations don't change the fact that for most of the show's runtime, the central couple barely shared a screen. The chemistry that existed had almost no room to actually develop. When the leads are warning you, pre-release not to expect too much together time, and the show still generates that level of anticipation, only for the structure to confirm exactly what they warned about, that's a very specific kind of disappointment. Were they dealt an impossible hand by the writing, or should the show have been structured differently from the start? The next couple might honestly be the most argued about pairing on this entire list. If there was ever a show riding on pure hype momentum, it's this one. Season 1 built a massive, passionate fan base around its love triangle premise and its 2 male leads. By the time Season 2 arrived, expectations weren't just high. They were borderline impossible to meet, and that's exactly where things fell apart. A significant chunk of online discourse pointed to scheduling and filming gaps between seasons as a major factor. Viewers and critics alike noted shifts in pacing and tone that made the established dynamics from Season 1 feel oddly distant in Season 2. The triangle that fans had spent an entire season emotionally investing in suddenly felt rushed, with major relationship decisions happening faster than the writing had built trust for. Comment sections at the time were filled with viewers saying the connection that felt so natural in Season 1 suddenly felt forced or unearned in the follow-up. The specific pairing most fans had championed going into the second season felt like it got resolved in a way that prioritized plot convenience over earned emotional payoff, and that's one of the fastest ways to make chemistry feel hollow, even when the performances themselves are fine. Some fans placed blame squarely on the writing, claiming the season tried to wrap up a complicated triangle in far too little screen time. Others felt production circumstances affected how the season was shot and assembled, leading to a final product that felt choppier than its predecessor. Either way, this remains one of the most debated sequel chemistry letdowns in recent K-drama memory. Were the leads set up to fail by circumstances outside their control, or did the writing simply rush the ending? This is one of the most reliably argued about topics in K-drama fan spaces, so don't hold back. And now, number 1. The pairing that, despite arguably the biggest pre-release hype of anything on this entire list, left the most fans feeling completely let down. Before we get to it, if you've made it this far, you clearly love a good debate. Make sure that comment is ready, because number 1 is the one people argue about the most. Every single time. No drama on this list carried more pre-release hype. A historical romance set during a politically turbulent era, starring one of the most recognizable faces in global K-pop in her acting debut, alongside a critically respected and already beloved leading man. This had viral anticipation before a single frame was shown to the public. And then everything got complicated. Once it premiered, public conversation became dominated almost entirely by controversy surrounding the show's historical framing, and that controversy swallowed the central romance completely. Whatever chemistry existed between the leads got buried under an intense debate that had nothing to do with their performances individually. By the time some viewers were able to separate the noise from the actual content on screen, many of them described the central relationship as feeling compressed. 2 characters who fall deeply in love across a very tight timeline, without quite enough small, quiet character moments to make that emotional leap feel fully earned. Some critics pointed to pacing and structure. The show packed a significant amount of plot into its episode count, leaving limited space for the kind of gradual, intimate relationship building this genre usually requires to land. Others maintain that the surrounding controversy affected overall reception so heavily that audiences struggled to emotionally connect with the romance in the way the creators intended, regardless of what was actually being performed on screen. This is where the list gets genuinely divided. There are passionate defenders of this pairing who point to specific scenes as proof the chemistry was real and effective. There are just as many viewers who maintain that the rushed structure and the noise surrounding the show made it impossible to ever fully invest in the couple at its center. Both arguments have merit, which is what makes this the most debated entry on the entire list, and exactly why it sits at number 1. Which side are you on? Drop it in the comments. And that's the list. 10 couples that had every reason to become iconic and somehow still left a lot of us feeling underwhelmed. From rushed pacing to tonal whiplash, from scripts that separated leads for entire episodes, to plots that buried the romance under controversy or spectacle, the reasons varied, but the disappointment was very real for a lot of viewers. If you ask me, the most shocking entries were Forecasting Love and Weather and Big Mouth. Both had arguably the biggest star power combinations of their release years, and both ended up with couples who had more chemistry in their press photos than in the actual show. And Snowdrop at number 1 remains the entry that never stops generating debate years after it aired. But here's what I actually want to know from you. Which one of these couples do you think deserved a genuine second chance? A different writer, a better structured script, a different directing style? And more importantly, did we get this ranking wrong? Which pairing would you move up? Which one would you cut entirely? And which couple from a drama we didn't include should absolutely have made this list? Drop your picks in the comments, hit like if you survived this entire debate with us, and subscribe if you want more K-drama lists like this one, because trust me, we've got plenty more controversial